Catholic Views. I'm your host, Renee Kranz. In the studio with me today, I have our brand new chancellor for the Diocese of Sioux Falls, Thad Pals. Welcome, Thad. Thad?
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I don't know what I was going to say for your first name, but I've been having trouble with first names this morning. I called my longtime social media manager a different name this morning. And I was like, well, I would say it's Monday, but it's not.
Well, to help you out, my name is Thad. It's not Thaddeus. So
Right.
people get confused, but it is just Thad.
So it's not short for Thaddeus.
No.
Okay. No. That's good to know.
Not sure why, but
whenever you're in trouble, I'll not call you Thaddeus.
I didn't have a choice when they named me. So.
Right. You did not. Well, I'm really glad you came in. We wanted you to come in to, first of all, introduce you to the diocese as our new chancellor. How many weeks have you been here?
Almost 2 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's long time.
Longer than some people, probably. I don't know. You might still be the newest person here. That's okay. We love you. So we wanted you to tell us your conversion story, because you're telling me you have a good conversion story.
I don't know if it's good, but it is a conversion story.
It is a conversion story. And they're good to hear, because a lot of times people, especially cradle Catholics, are just like, oh, I've just been Catholic my whole life. I don't really understand this conversion thing. It's good to hear it, because we can have a huge effect on people's lives. You just never know what kind of seeds you're planting. So I'm curious to hear that. So let's start. Will you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, college, those kind of things?
Sure. I grew up in Orange City, Iowa.
Okay.
So I am very Dutch. I think 100%.
Wow.
Yeah. So grew up in Orange City, great place to live, incredible parents, grandparents. If you know Orange City, it is...
Where is it?
It's northwest Iowa.
Okay.
It's only like an hour and 15 minutes from Sioux Falls.
Okay, sure.
But very Christian town.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't know people that didn't go to church.
Oh.
Now, with that said, there wasn't a Catholic church in town either.
Oh, wow.
So I heard all of the things that Protestants hear about the Catholic Church, which are all wrong, right? And so grew up just not knowing anything about the Catholic Church. Orange City basically had two different churches, or different Protestant churches, either a Dutch Reformed or a Christian Reformed.
Okay.
I didn't go to either one of those.
Okay.
So I was really one of the oddballs in Orange City.
Sure.
I went to a Christian and Missionary Alliance church, which everyone looks at me with a dumb look on their face, like you have right now.
I'm like, I have no idea what that is.
I would call it a conservative Baptist type of church. So,
yeah.
But great place. Went Sunday morning, Sunday night, middle of the week, was very involved in youth group.
You get to know the Bible very well.
We did get to know the Bible very well.
Most of it, yes.
Memorize verses. There was something I think it was called BMA, Bible Memory Association. And each week you had, depending on your age, you had so many Bible verses that you would memorize each week. And then as you did so many weeks, then you'd get prizes.
Wow.
So things like that. Yeah, it was
That's amazing.
I know. It was a great way to be brought up.
Yeah.
Great town, very clean town. Tula Festival every year.
Oh, nice.
That sort of thing. So, but yeah, very involved in school. Was very musical, marching band, athletic, basketball. I can
see that.
You know, it's a small town. You do everything.
Yes, you do.
So I played cello, I played percussion, I sang, I played piano for a while. Don't ask me to do many of those right now, but I can still do percussion.
We have some things in common I didn't know. I played drums when I was in high school and stuff too.
Okay.
Yeah, and very Dutch.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of fast forward. But all through high school, very involved in youth group. Went to SDSU. And was right away, because I'm from Orange City, the first thing on my mind was I've got to find a good Christian community to get involved with. And someone on my floor was in Campus Crusade for Christ. So he invited me to that meeting, and right away I became involved in Campus Crusade for Christ. And it was great. I mean, had a really good core group of friends, and did a lot of things.
Yeah.
I mean, over the course of the 4 years, I did a missionary trip to Newport Beach, California.
Okay.
I'm not sure how that's really a missionary trip when you're going to Newport Beach, but it was a fun summer.
I bet it was.
You're witnessing out on the beach.
Yeah.
Talking to people about Christ, and the 4 spiritual laws is what we used. So I don't know if there was much fruit from that, other than it was a really good experience.
Sure.
And, really took you out of your comfort zone, and you really had to believe what you believe.
Yep.
And so, all through college, I was very involved in marching band for the most part, and I majored in music and in business.
Oh, Okay.
So a little combination, which ultimately turned into playing for about 15 years in the South Dakota Symphony.
Oh, wow.
As a percussionist.
I was not that good.
Even played at Christmas at the cathedral several times.
Nice.
So,
very cool.
that how that all went down.
Yeah.
But at any rate, that's kind of my long and short history.
Yeah. You were married?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
My senior year in marching band, ran into this freshman girl who was at the time a Dakota Deb, if that brings back memories from
it
anybody.
Does not, no.
So the marching band would play 4 songs every halftime. I think it was the second or third song. The whole band would stand still, and the Dakota Debs would come out. They're cheerleaders.
Okay. Sure.
And they would do a dance and whatever else. At any rate, one of them caught my eye. And so it was also, I think it was the centennial or something of South Dakota, and we went to Pierre to march in November of all times of the year. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we just started hanging out in Pierre, South Dakota, and I found out she was Catholic, which I was like, uh-oh.
But I like you. Do you have to be Catholic?
She's kind of cute, So do you have to be Catholic? And really, again, didn't run into many Catholics.
Sure.
Those that I knew, just never talked about their faith.
Sure. Yeah.
So at any rate, I decided, well, I'll ask her if she'll go to church with me. And if she does, well, maybe there's hope. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And of course, she did. So she started going to church with me in Brookings. And we dated for a year. I'll fast forward a little bit. Dated for a year, and then we're married a year later.
Okay.
So a year of engagement after that.
Sure.
And moved down to, we were in Vermilion, South Dakota, of all places. I had started MBA program in Vermilion. No offense to anyone from Vermilion, did not care for the town or the school. Sorry, I'm an SDSU jackrabbit through and through.
We just made a few enemies there.
yeah, I just did. Oh well. But we after a semester of that, we got married and decided, you know what, this MBA program's not for me. I can't.
Right.
It just wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. So we just found jobs like everybody did, lived on love, right?
Of course.
No money, but a lot of love.
Yes.
And lived in Vermilion for a few months. And then through a series of events, Jenny actually got a job back in Sioux Falls, where she's from originally. Mm-hmm. Charter member of St. Michael's, she and her family. Mm-hmm. So she got a job back in Sioux Falls and would drive back and forth. And then shortly thereafter, I found a job in Sioux Falls and started our careers here in Sioux Falls.
Okay.
Kind of fell into banking.
Okay.
And basically I've had a 30-year career in banking and various other positions, but all dealing with finance, credit card, on the credit card side mostly.
Sure. Okay.
And that's really been my career up till now.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's a big change now.
And Jenny was in financial planning, et cetera.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Couple kids? I don't know how many kids
we've had a couple kids. Yeah, we've had 5.
5? Just a couple.
Just a couple. 27 down to 17.
Okay.
So
you have one more at home.
One more at home.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And at any rate, we'll get back to my story, my conversion story.
Yeah,
I think that's what we're supposed to talk about.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, tell us, please, how that happened.
So when we got married, the decision that we had made together was that we wouldn't go to the Catholic Church, but I said, well, I'll send my kids to Catholic school.
Okay.
Number one, I knew they were great schools.
Right.
Right. So that was kind of our compromise. And that worked for a while. But we started what all Protestants do. You shop for your church, right?
Right.
If I liked the church, she didn't. If she liked the church, I didn't.
Oh, boy.
And, after going to about every denomination in town, we ended up at Central Baptist, which is Central Church now. Mm-hmm. And that's probably where we spent the most time of the first 11 years of our marriage.
Sure.
So that 11th year of marriage, we were expecting our 4th child. Mm-hmm. And my dad actually invited me to go to Promise Keepers. Okay. Which is a Protestant male.
It's like a men's group.
Well, it's a big rally.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Yeah.
Convention, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Anyway, it was up in Minneapolis. So I hopped on a bus with him and a bunch of guys from his men's group at church. And there was one Catholic on the bus. And
you're like, who is this
Well,
guy?
I mean, they start kind of hounding him for questions and whatnot. And he actually kind of knew his faith and was responding, which I'd never really heard the Catholic viewpoint at all.
Right.
Didn't pay a lot of attention to it, but at the same time, I was like, God, they're really picking on this guy. You know? So we got up to the Excel Center in Minneapolis, or in St. Paul rather, and it was weird. At that point, all of a sudden, I walked in the door, and it was like I heard this voice that said, "You've tried every denomination but Catholic.
Uh-huh.
And it's time to get your family on the same page."
Right. Because that's important.
It is.
Yeah.
And so that whole weekend long, I don't think I said 2 words, which
Wow.
is kind of unusual for me.
So it was a weekend,
It was a weekend
convention. Okay.
Yeah. And rode back on the bus and went home. And this whole time, that's all I could hear in my head was, "You tried everything but Catholic."
This was a very emotional thing for you because
Yes.
if you aren't watching the video, I'm going to rat you out just a little bit. Thad is getting a little choked up.
Yes.
So that was an emotional moment for you because you heard God talking to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Went back home. The next week, I told Jenny, I said, "Well, let's go to St. Michael's." Mm-hmm. After I picked her up off the floor.
for being in shock.
For being in shock. We went to St. Michael's, and, as all good, Christians do, you read the bulletin while the homily's going on. And
You're not even supposed to pick it up until after church. Then.
Oh, okay. Well, at that point, they handed them out on the way in. At any rate, reading it, I'm like, RCIA, what, Rite of Catholic? I said, what? I'm like, what is this? She's like, well, that's where you go to learn about the Catholic faith. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go. Again, I had to pick her up off the floor after she was in shock.
Right.
And I started going to RCIA. It started the following week. So timing was everything in this whole process. Mm-hmm. And I'll do a shout out to Father Joe Vogel, who was priest at the time.
Yes.
And, great guy, great man of faith.
Priest.
And, he knew what he believes, and he could explain it to you very well. So I think that was key.
He's very real.
Yeah.
Which is one of the beautiful things about him.
Yeah. And it's black and white. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So started going through RCIA, and, you get your handouts each week and whatever else. And they were fine, but it was like, there's got to be more.
Right.
Well, the lay person that was leading the RCIA had this box full of, I'm dating myself, cassette tapes. They weren't 8-track, they were cassette. But had cassette tapes. And he said, hey, just take what you want. All I ask is that you return them. So I started taking tapes every week and listening to these things in my car. Scott Hahn, I could name a bunch, but I won't just for the sake of time. But I was devouring this material.
Yeah.
And just went through RCIA. And I think it was about 2 weeks before Easter. And I don't think Jenny even knew if I was going to decide to become Catholic.
Right, because you don't have to be confirmed in the church.
Right, you don't have to. But I was convicted by a couple of things. Mm-hmm. The main one, obviously, being the Eucharist.
Right.
John chapter 6.
Right.
I don't know. I don't remember what we did as Protestants, how we get around that whole chapter.
I've always wanted to ask someone who really, did you talk about that chapter, or did you just kind of blow over it?
I don't honestly remember.
Yeah.
I mean, we obviously read it.
Right.
But it just didn't sink in. Mm-hmm. How many times Jesus says, this is my body, this is my blood, and then everybody deserts him.
Right.
I mean, if it was just a symbol, why would they leave?
And why would he let them?
Yeah. So that was the main reason that I came into the church, was the Eucharist. Mm-hmm. The second thing was, you think about it logically, when Jesus gives Peter the keys to the kingdom, mm-hmm. and you hear about, how did this church last for 2,000 years mm-hmm. without some form of hierarchy and some form of, obviously, someone being led by the Holy Spirit and everything. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of confusion about the Pope.
Right.
Is Peter the Pope, and all the whole succession and whatever else. There's been great popes. There's been bad popes.
Right.
But they're all human. Mm-hmm. And, I just sat there going, if this is true, that makes total sense. Why is there 24,000, or I don't know how many there are now, 30-some thousand different mm-hmm. denominations? Mm-hmm. Why has the Catholic Church, who's in every country in the world, how did it all stay together?
Right.
I mean, that's crazy. We're all humans. There's
a lot
fight.
of messing up
we fight,
going on.
Right? We mess
Yes.
up. And, the more I learned about Catholicism, the more I realized that there's not many differences between Catholic and Protestant.
Right.
You know,
There's a few key ones.
It's the Eucharist. It's the Pope and his authority. And those are the two big ones, right? And so once I got those things straight in my mind, then it was like, okay, if I make this decision, it's generational. It's going to affect my kids.
Yep.
What if I'm wrong?
Oh, sure.
Another emotional spot for me.
It's you know what though, Thad, it's really good to see someone be emotional about this stuff, especially a man, because the men, a lot of times they don't let that show. So thank you for doing that.
Okay, thanks for giving me time to recoup.
You're welcome. That's what I'm trying to do.
So yeah, I mean, I said to Jenny, I'm going to join the church.
Pick her
Third
up
time
off the
I
floor
picked
again.
her off the floor. But I said I have to tell my parents first.
Oh yeah.
And so my folks knew I was in RCIA. I told them, and this kind of probably was my real reason for going into RCIA, was to prove that the Catholic Church was wrong, so that
Yep.
I didn't have to deal with it anymore.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Yep, it does.
And so I met with my parents. Jenny and I did. We met them. They were in Okoboji, so we met them, I think it was in Worthington or somewhere. And we just sat down and had dinner. And I had written a letter basically saying, these are the reasons I'm decided to join the Catholic Church, et cetera, et cetera. And, the response was tears.
Sure. Yeah.
The response was, I wish you would have given us more time. Our pastor is a former Catholic in our church.
Oh, wow. That makes it interesting.
And I actually said, well, I'd love to meet with him because I do. I wanted to make sure I was making the right decision.
Absolutely.
And he said, no, I think you've made up your mind. And it's, there's not enough time between now and Easter. It was a week away.
Right.
So I made my mind up. And, my father has since passed away, but we could talk about it.
Good.
And my mom is totally accepting of it, et cetera. So
that's so good to hear.
It is really good.
Because I can go totally the other way.
I can't say that anyone else in my family has become Catholic,
Sure.
but at the same time, it's been neat.
Good.
And so at any rate,
here you are.
So here we are.
How long ago was that?
20 years ago.
20 years.
And the only reason I remember that is because number 4 was born that year. So and she'll be 20 this coming September.
And now your kids, I assume, are also in the Catholic Church, at least as much as they. Sometimes kids don't cooperate.
As much as they will cooperate.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
I think all of us as parents have kids that have left the church,
sure.
and it takes some kind of special, something or other to get them back in the church.
It doesn't. It's very often not the parents who can actually do it.
Right.
So,
but we did, as I promised Jenny up front, we did send our kids through Catholic school all the way through. Yeah. And I kind of joked that my summer home is on Kiwanis and 41st, or my lake home rather.
Yeah. That's funny.
So that's kind of the story.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish I could say it was bliss after that, but
because it's real life.
Yeah, but the thing that just I love the most about this faith is that you never stop learning.
Yeah.
There is so much. I mean,
it's so true.
My denomination that I went to before of, 75, 100 years, whatever it was, there's not much history there to learn.
Right.
The Catholic Church, I mean, with all the saints, with all the, the early church fathers, how many were martyred for this faith?
Yep.
And for the Eucharist, how many priests have run into burning buildings to save the Eucharist? It's just an amazing story.
It is.
And so, if anything, what I tell people that are searching is that search for truth. Because, Pilate said, what is truth? And with so much relativism out there today, it's hard to find the truth. And I found it.
Yep. It's in the church.
It's in the church.
It's in the church. That was a great story. You were right. It's a good one. You said, well, I know it's long. It can fit 20 minutes.
Yep, I know. And I knew I was going to get emotional. So
and what's really great is Thad has really embraced his faith. He and his family go to Holy Spirit, where I go. He's in the choir. You do
men's group.
Yep, men's group. You're also a Eucharistic minister, right? Yep. Extraordinary minister of Holy Communion, Dr. Burkwald.
If you want to be official,
So we only have like a minute left, and I don't know if you can tell me this in a minute, but what made you decide to apply for chancellor? Can you say that in a minute?
Well, I've done 20 years in the banking and finance industry, and after a while, you get really, really comfortable. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing that I think people need to watch out for is comfort, whether it's in your marriage, in your job, whatever.
Yep.
And so I just needed something different.
Yeah.
And I had applied for a position with the foundation.
Oh, sure.
And they decided not to hire for that position.
That's right. Yep.
Because Mark was retiring and they wanted to replace him, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Well, then a month or two later, I noticed, Mark Gonzimez's position they're advertising for this. What in the world? So I called him up and he said, well, let's have lunch. And he told me about the chancellor position. And then he said, I think he'd be great for it. I said, well, what does a chancellor do?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. I learn every day something new, other than I wear a lot of hats and I do a lot of administrative type things for the bishop. So it's been a great learning experience, a lot of fun, incredible people here. Yep. And it's just going to be such a pleasure to serve the priests and the bishop and the laity of the great Eastern South Dakota.
Yeah, yeah. So, you have big shoes to fill behind Matt Altoff, but I think you're doing really good so far.
Very big shoes.
Yeah.
And if I'm half as good as he was,
you'll be great.
I'll be great.
You'll be as good or better. And Matt would tell you the same thing. He's always very gracious that way. So I'm glad you came here to join us at the Chancery and become our chancellor. I'm so glad you applied because so far it's been a real pleasure getting to know you. And this was a really great story. Thank you for telling it. Yeah, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. If you haven't found us already on social media, you can find us at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and at Rumble, all at SF Diocese is our handle. And you can always find us at sfcatholic.org anytime to find out whatever you need to about the diocese. That's it for us today. Hope you'll join us again next week for more Catholic Views.